I'm joined by my grandma, my girlfriend Michelle, my dad, and my grandpa who's filming. And the purpose of today's speech is to inform how the JFK assassination changed the world. And as we all know, JFK's assassination was a tragedy and it's worldly known. And however, the ways that it changed the world would have only happened through his death. And the USA was changed in drastic ways after his assassination, and it would not be what it was today if it had not occurred. And it changed the world by enabling the Civil Rights Act, speeding up space exploration, and it increased hostility with the Soviets in the Cold War. And to begin with, Kennedy's assassination enabled the Civil Rights Act due to his wanting to pass the act before his death. The JFK Library states that after JFK's death, the Civil Rights Act was left in the hands of Lyndon B. Johnson, who used tactics to get the act passed. Johnson was able to do this by using the outpour of emotion after the president's death and used the tactic of saying that the way to honor Kennedy would be passing the Civil Rights Act. And the Miller Center, who specializes in presidential scholarship, public policy, and political history, says that President Johnson announced his intention to pursue the passage of Civil Rights Act legislation as a tribute to Kennedy. And the influence behind honoring Kennedy by passing the act was a strong, persuasive tactic that was strong enough to get the Civil Rights Act passed more quickly. And that being the first way it changed the world. Moving on to the second way, JFK's assassination sped up space exploration, and History.com, which is a huge organization, states that JFK made a speech before Congress on May 25th, expressing the need for a space program and urging Congress for financial resources to speed up space exploration. Kennedy's vision became a reality 6 years after his assassination, and History.com also states that in 1961, President John F. Kennedy announces to Congress his goal of sending an American to the moon by the end of the decade and asked for financial support of an accelerated space program. And in 1969, the U.S. made it to the moon, and JFK stated that he wanted it done by the end of the decade in the speech given in 1961, so this means that it was done within the decade, and obviously was sped up in honor of the vision of JFK. And the death of Kennedy, lastly, increased tension between the Soviet Union and the United States during the Cold War. And the Huffington Post says that Nikita Khrushchev developed a respect for Kennedy as a man that he could trust and deal with. And Khrushchev was a Soviet statesman who led the Soviet Union during part of the Cold War as first secretary of the Communist Party. This means that the quote-unquote murder of Kennedy caused Soviets to return to an aggressive hardline against America and continued their mistrust of American administrators under Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Connor. And USA Today backs up my main point in one of their articles, saying that due to Kennedy's assassination, the Soviet leaders feared that some irresponsible general would take over and might launch a missile at the Soviet Union. A document that was found from December 1st, 1966, said that the assassination flashed to the Soviet people, and church bells were tolled in the memory of President Kennedy in Russia. And it is certain that the assassination of John F. Kennedy increased tension between the Soviets and the USA because of the growing relationship between Nikita Khrushchev and JFK before JFK's murder. And perhaps now you can see why the assassination of John F. Kennedy was such an important event and why it is still heavily known of today and will continue to forever be a tragedy in American history. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories around his assassination and why he was killed, and there's really nothing that's ever going to be able to tell how it happened or why it happened, and that's why it'll always be something to be talked about, because there's always going to be people trying to figure out why it happened and who was behind it. Are there any questions?
So how do you, or why did you say that he enabled the Civil Rights Act, or how did he
Because so before he was trying to before he died, he was trying to pass the Civil Rights Act, and the presidential election was coming up for him to run for a second term, and that would have took eyes off of the civil rights and put eyes on the candidates. And since he died, there was a heavily outpour of emotion, and soon before he died, he was trying to pass the Civil Rights Act, and after he died, Johnson took over, and Johnson used the emotion of Kennedy dying as like a persuasive tactic to enable the Civil Rights Act as a way of honoring Kennedy.
Was there a gunman in the grassy knoll?
Well, what Russia thinks and why Russia increased their hardline against America is that the CIA was involved with it because Kennedy was trying to shut down the CIA. So the Russian government thinks that the CIA came up with a way to kill Kennedy and cover it up with using George Orwell.
Oswald?
Yeah, Oswald. I'm just gonna cut that part out. That's it.
You're at 6.5 minutes anyway.
Yeah, that's good.